A documentary film crew lost at sea and shipwrecked on a mysterious island full of monsters and intrigue. A billionaire who knows more than it seems, and his bodyguards struggling to keep him alive. An evil lurking in the jungle, stalking them in a deadly game. This is Point Nemo. Point Nemo is a one-shot sci-fi survival RPG launching Tuesday, November 2nd on Kickstarter. This is the second adventure written for the 3-2-1 action RPG rule set and is loaded with cool playable characters, crazy charts, malicious monsters, and wild weapons. This full-length adventure can be played over the course of one night or broken up into individual episodes and features several fun side quests and interesting island destinations. So if you're ready to rumble in the jungle, be sure to join us for some action, November 2nd on Kickstarter.
This is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. Tonight, I said, hey, Stu, I got something to talk about, and he said, okay, Stu Horvath.
Yeah, I did, because, I'm easygoing like that.
You are, and it's delightful to be your partner in this endeavor that we call the Vintage RPG Podcast.
Less work for me,
Sometimes I bring the topics. And tonight, we are actually going to talk about me, and mostly 3-2-1 Action's latest adventure that's going to Kickstarter. By the time you listen to this episode, it will be live on Kickstarter Tuesday, November 2nd. It is coming faster than I expected. Point Nemo.
Ain't that always the way?
I've been preparing, and then I blink, and suddenly, we're recording this a few days before Halloween, and I still got stuff to do to get ready.
Are you ready? Are you feeling it?
I am nervous. The first time I did a Kickstarter earlier this year, I did it for 3-2-1 Action Rocket to Russia, and my guts were like a mess the entire week before.
Yeah.
And, my anxiety was like peaking, and stuff was happening to my body that I wasn't too sure of. Later on, I found out that I needed to get a colonoscopy, but that was a completely different thing. I thought it was the Kickstarter, but it's good to know that it was just butt problems unrelated to the Kickstarter. This time, obviously, the colonoscopy went very well, everybody, back in February. But this time, I am just constantly grinding, constantly trying to promote, trying to get everything ready, trying to get all my ducks in a row while finishing the game, while doing another secret game that I'm going to announce a little later today that is going to be for all the Kickstarter backers, which is pretty excited. So, yeah, now it's just general anxiety and upset tummy and, just waiting for the whole thing to be over.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I was surprised that you decided to do this to yourself twice in 1 year.
Yeah.
That's more punishment than I'm willing to endure.
Well, in fairness, you have been a publisher now for over a decade, and you do the subscription drive for Unwinnable once a year. And I feel like that's more than enough because I know the anxiety.
It's going on right now, folks. It goes on until I take down the links. So they're probably still up as this episode drops. So right after you kickstart 3-2-1 Action Point Nemo, come back on over to unwinnable.com and subscribe because we write good things. But this one's actually kind of going pretty smooth. I'm not anxious at all, which is super strange.
Well, that's fine because I have enough for the both of us.
So what is 3-2-1 Action Point Nemo, Hambo? Tell our listeners.
So 3-2-1 Action is an RPG rule set that myself and Stu and I's lifelong friend and my best friend, George Colazzo, wrote together. We wanted to create a cinematic storytelling engine that had a really low barrier for entry that everyone can get involved and get to the table and have some fun playing the game. So if you've ever wanted to drop a Macho Man elbow off a crate onto some Martians or pull the John McClane stunt of jumping off the top of Nakatomi Plaza with only a machine gun, bare feet, and a fire hose wrapped around your waist, we can find a way to make that happen in 3-2-1 Action.
How so?
So it all takes place with one roll. We use one dice. We use a single D10. And how it works is you have stats like any other RPG, except you only have to really worry about your stats. And if you want to do something outside of your stats, so you have your basic stats: action, brains, brawn, charm, cool, and guts. Mm-hmm. However, we've come across a lot of things over the years playing RPGs where you constantly have to figure out, what do I roll for this? And this it's going to fall somewhere under those 6 stats. And if you want to do something that is like way outside of what you normally do, like say, for instance, you come across a motorcycle in a field, you don't have to worry about having a percentage or a percentile to be able to do it. You're going to roll a single D10, and then the game runner, who is the person who runs the game, will tell you, all right, you have a penalty or a bonus based on what's going to happen. More likely than not, if it's something you're not used to doing, it's going to be a penalty. However, we will give you the opportunity to fill the plot hole in 2 sentences. And, for me, going to Gen Con for so many years, I used to go to the writing symposiums and check out different writers and authors. Always wanted to be able to write. I cannot tell you who it was who said it because I was drinking back then. And someone said, any kind of plot hole in any story could really be fixed with 2 sentences. So we give you the opportunity to do that. You come across a motorcycle in the field, the game runner's going to be like, well, how do you know how to ride a motorcycle? Fill the plot hole in 2 sentences. You'll say, well, one summer I used to ride dirt bikes with my cousin, drove my mother crazy. Perfect. No penalty to the roll. Straight roll of the D10. You roll at or below your stat. And there you go. We keep the action flowing. We want to keep that cinematic storytelling experience fast and fun for everybody.
That sort of situation crops up in my Call of Cthulhu games pretty often. We call that Blades in the Darking, because they have the flashback mechanic in there. And I like that. Yours is even easier because there's no mechanical penalty. It's just like, you come up with the thing on the fly, you get to do it. It's a little bit like Trail of Cthulhu, where you're going to get the clue automatically. It doesn't slow down the game.
And that's one of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to take all of the tropes that drove us nuts about other RPGs. Now, I love RPGs. I love Dungeons and Dragons. If there is a dice to be rolled, I want to play your game. And that being said, a lot of games always have that one thing that drives every player nuts. And it is something that'll probably occur in my game for some players as well. But it's that one thing you're like, man, do I really need to roll for that? So more often than not, the answer is going to be no, because if you're looking for something, you are going to find it. If you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go over here, I want to look for clues. If you go over there and you're going to look for clues, you're going to find the clue, because nothing slows the game down more than 5 people trying to roll to find something and each of them failing in succession. So we take all that out. If you're looking for it, you're going to find it. Brains checks are more for picking locks, for logic reason, for things like that, where you're trying to actually solve something rather than, I'm going to go look over here and touch this drawer. Oh, I rolled too high or too low, and now I can't find it. And then your buddy's like, well, I want to look too. And then everyone's going to look, and suddenly like the game is stalled.
Yeah, it's like everybody rolling spot hidden in Call of Cthulhu in order. It's like, oh, come on. Yeah, somebody saw it.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
You tripped over it. Point and laugh at that guy. And, that's kind of what we do. Our mechanic for combat is really simple. Everything hits. Everything automatically hits. You will roll a D10 and you'll subtract the weapon's modifier. So say, for instance, you want to use a combat knife. You have a damage modifier of -4. So you roll a D10, subtract 4. Whatever's left is the damage that you do.
Oh, there you go. That's simple.
It's simple. And certain weapons have the inverse, like, say, a shotgun, which is damage -1. So you get a little more bang for your buck, pun intended. However, it also has a special ability where if you're firing at point blank range, the damage bonus increases to +3. However, if you don't kill the creature outright, it immediately performs a counterattack. So a lot of what we do is trying to keep it that cinematic feel, risk reward for almost everything. And look, you watch any kind of movie, what happens? You pick up a gun and suddenly you're shooting straight. So everyone gets to hit. However, you might not get a lot of damage. And if you don't do any damage, that's as good as missing. But there's no roll to hit. You just roll for damage. And even initiative, we try to keep everything simple. So players go first, monsters go second, always. With the exception of a surprise, the initiative order. And we encourage everybody to work together and create the scene together. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? I grew up reading Marvel comics and X-Men and, the fastball special. Easy to do in 3, 2, 1 action.
How do you do it?
So what you would do is this, you're automatically going to hit, but you would have your buddy make a brawn check, right? And the game runner will give you a penalty or a bonus. You would roll it, and if you hit it, you're throwing your buddy at the monster.
Okay, so the Colossus character is making the roll to see if they hit with the projectile that is Wolverine.
To see if they can do it. If they can successfully throw Wolverine, Wolverine's going to hit and do damage.
All right, I see. I get that. Like if he has like a knife or whatever, like it would be the same thing. Because you're not going to be Wolverine, right? You're going to be like some guy with like a pitchfork. Like it's the flying pitchfork maneuver in this You got to go off brand.
Or at the very least, you're going to like stick pencils in your palms and put them through your fingers and just dive at someone. Lead poisoning. We have a damage roll for that. However, if off-brand Colossus blows their brawn check, then you're going to dump your buddy into a pile in front of you and not really get anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it keeps it interesting. We want to give you the opportunity to do a harebrained scheme and just go outside of the box. But man, I've had players go outside of the state with some of the stuff that they wanted to do, and it's awesome because, you know, it challenges the game runner to come up with something cool in response to that. However, because of the minimal amount of rules, you have the freedom to do that. So, you know, when you're herding cats, these cats are like, man, what if I took that can of Spam and used that as a weapon instead of the M4?
Do you find that when given a gun and a pencil, they're going to choose the pencil 9 times out of 10?
A lot of times, yeah. I mean, in a lot of situations, and I can't speak for other game runners, dungeon masters, keeper of secrets, because everyone has their own vibe. That being said, you know, we've all played different RPGs, and a lot of the time there isn't really a mechanic to do that really dumb idea that you want to try. We give you the opportunity to do that. So I did have a player come across a pile of cans of Spam, and he had a fully loaded M4 rifle, like every bullet you could possibly have in this thing. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to drop the gun because I don't have enough inventory spots. I'm taking the Spam. And he went into the boss fight with Spam.
Whatever works, man. Go with God.
It worked by grace of his friend picked up the M4, and some other players had some heavy weaponry, but he was able to set traps into lure creatures with the Spam. So you find a way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we talked recently about the Alien RPG, and one of the things that in running it that people seem to have a little trouble wrapping their head around is that they don't have to worry about ammo until they panic. When they panic, they run out of ammo because they fire through the rest of their clip. But until that point, as long as you're not panicking, you don't have to track it. And I find that because of that, that moves sort of combat out of the forefront of their thinking, and they start thinking about other things that they could do for their situation. And I think something similar is at play here.
It definitely is. Because another thing that I found from playing a lot of games is resource management becomes cumbersome. And they don't forget the cool thing that they have and would find very useful in the moment because they have so much other cool stuff. So you're limited to 4 inventory spaces, and certain items will take up more than 1 space. However, the way it works is bullets and gun, arrow and bow, shotgun shells and shotgun. That's 1 item. So if it's the weapon and the weapon's ammunition, only counts as 1 item.
Okay.
And there's no max. However, when, you know, you find like a bag of Molotov cocktails, that's 1 item. If you're looking for ammo, though, you will roll a D10, and each style of ammunition has a modifier that you're going to subtract to see how much ammo you find. So it doesn't become so much a thing where you're overpowered because you have an endless supply of ammo. You may go through a combat, find some more ammo, and roll 2 bullets. And then what are you going to do? You have to find a way to survive. And we also didn't want to do it so much so where everyone solely relies on guns, and that's where the Spam thing comes in.
Yeah.
You know, another thing with 3-2-1 action is you can use it to tell any story. If you want to do a weird Western, you want to do a mystery, you want to do a heist, the rule set is really not set in stone for only telling action movie stories. It just happens to be like the first thing that we tried to write when we started doing this for ZineQuest with Rocket to Russia, and now finishing the story with Point Nemo. You know, our next game is going to be horror. We actually have a horror game in the process of being written, which might not be so combat heavy because it's horror. Down the line, I think another year or 2 from now, I mean, probably 2023, we're doing a heist. So they're going to be the same kind of gameplay mechanics, but it's not going to be so I can walk in and just start blowing people up, because if you do, there's going to be consequences. So we wanted to give people the opportunity to really take this rule set that we have, this cinematic storytelling engine, and then tell their stories with it.
Do you envision like the horror game going to need to modify the rules at all, or is it baked into the existing rule set?
It's already baked into the rule set. What we're going to do for each different style of gameplay are going to come up with a few additional rules that are specific to that game. So for instance, in the horror game, we have like a final girl rule. We also have like a rule where as the monsters and as the game runner roll a dice to be like, okay, this is how many turns before the monster shows up. Little things like that don't take away from the rules that are already there. They're just a couple additional rules to be unique for that specific game. And for fantasy, we are going to do a fantasy game next summer, early fall. So we're coming up with a magic system that will work within the framework of what we built already, because we don't want people to have to feel like they need to learn a lot more rules for that specific game. It's going to be, you already know how to play 3-2-1 action. Here's 3 or 4 extra things you need to know that are going to make this style of gameplay better.
All right. Now, what is Point Nemo specifically about?
So Point Nemo is 2 years after the events of Rocket to Russia. Instead of being a essentially wet works team that goes there to clean up a problem on the island, which is what you were in Rocket to Russia, you're a documentary film crew that is funded by a billionaire who is headed to the island, specifically headed to Point Nemo, which is a real life spaceship graveyard in the middle of nowhere. This is where all the space debris and the space junk falls. Once shuttles are coming down, everything gets dropped into Point Nemo. A little bit of spoilers, but if you've played Rocket to Russia, there's an island there. So the documentary film crew shipwrecks on the island and they have to fight their way off it. So now you are dealing with the island that is inhabited by all sorts of different monsters and weird mysteries. And then you're not a Wetworks team. You are a cameraman. You are an award-winning chef that was there to make the special meals for the billionaire. You have to fight your way off it. I mean, one of the main characters is a 52-year-old woman who is the captain of the ship. So you're not just showing up there with like Schwarzenegger. You're showing up there with like Schwarzenegger's mom.
So pre-generated characters?
There are pre-generated characters. In the rule set, it is easy for you to roll up your own characters, so you don't have to feel beholden to just playing with these characters. Although I will say, probably also because I wrote some of these characters, they are pretty cool, and you do get to do some fun stuff with it. Everyone has a special ability. And, they represent different types of people from all walks of life that are now in a very precarious situation together. There are pre-generated characters, there are NPCs, there are crazy monsters. I am telling you, the 2 things I like doing most in the world is designing traps and creating monsters. And I got to have a lot of fun doing both in this game. And one thing that I think is like a really important point to get across is that you can take this story and you can take parts of this story. And if you want to run your own game based on beats from the story or things that happen on the island, destinations on the island, weird things that are happening, you can totally do that. You are the game runner. You can do what you want. And that being said, the story is actually really cool. And you get to play in the movie, essentially, because there are NPCs that really forward the plot along. And they're always there in the background. And the game runner is always running these NPCs in the background. And they're helping you to realize the story, which is something I really wanted to do, because a lot of times when you get an adventure, you get a module, it's easy to lose the plot. So these NPCs act as actors to kind of keep you on point. So when it's time to kind of find your way back to the story, there's beats that are going to lead you back if, you get off the beaten path.
So, okay. Burning question on my mind. You always ask me what the name of the runner of the game is when we talk about a new system, hoping that it's going to be something like extremely ridiculous, like Keeper of Secrets or Chillmaster. Why not director? So much of the game seems sort of centered around filmic kind of terminology. Director was right there. Why'd you choose game runner?
That's a great question. First off, I want to make a quick statement. I do not think that anything will ever be as good as Keeper of Secrets. It's all downhill from there.
Fair. Yeah.
Once you name your band Husker Du, where do you go? So initially when I started writing this,
you go up for Husker Du.
Agree to disagree. However, a director was on the table. The director was the first thing that I called it. I was seeing a lot of other games that were calling the people who oversaw the thing director. And also, one of the main things that I wanted to do with 3-2-1 action was I wanted to make it really accessible so everyone feels comfortable playing it and running it. And Game Runner felt good because it also kind of gives you the vibe that you are a part of the team and not in an adversarial role. So
Game Runner, what you're doing, right?
And it's what you're doing.
Yeah.
It means that you're on the team, but you're just kind of like coaching from the sidelines, but you're still very much a part of the game. So it's more encouraging to be on the team than it is to be behind the screen. So that's kind of where Game Runner landed.
All right, I get to do this now. Any final thoughts on Point Nemo?
Yes. My final thought on this is please back it. We are going live on Kickstarter Tuesday, November 2nd at 10 a.m. I will be up bright and early, drinking coffee, adding to my anxiety before I hit that go button. We got some great tiers. You can do a soft cover version of it. You can do a hardcover version of it. You could do the tier where I will run a private party for you and your friends to play the game, or you could jump in a pre-existing Point Nemo game and play with me. I love running the games for everybody. So that's pretty cool as well. We also have something really neat. George the other day was like, hey, buddy, why don't we make a Christmas adventure? And I'm sitting here going, dude, we're in the middle of trying to finish this new adventure. However, we want to do something cool for the backers and for the people who backed Rocket to Russia and the people who are going to back Point Nemo now. And whether you only backed Rocket to Russia, you backed both, we really appreciate you. You're spending your hard-earned money with us and you're taking a chance on a new game. And we want to say thank you. So we made a holiday adventure. So in the rule book, there is an Amphicora, which is the fish people on the island named Kevin. He became the unofficial mascot of 3-2-1 Action. He was drawn by Cheese Hasselberger, who's amazing. And Kevin is now on the island and he's got to save Christmas. So what does he do? He brings some of history's greatest, and I'm doing air quotes here, heroes through space and time to fight Krampus on Point Nemo. So this is like really the final bit of Point Nemo, and it's a fun holiday adventure that we're giving away for free to everyone who backed us. We are going to mail you a postcard. Now, granted, folks, we are only shipping to United States and Canada. However, if you back around the world, you will still get the PDF of this. We're going to mail you a holiday postcard from Point Nemo, Kearney, New Jersey, and you will have access on December 15th to Kevin Saves Christmas. So take a minute, if you don't mind, when you're listening to this, go get notified on Kickstarter for when we go live. When we do go live, please back Point Nemo. We want to keep making more amazing games to share with the world. We want you all to play 3-2-1 Action.
Hey, Hambone.
Yeah, buddy.
I know you're anxious. You're worrying about nothing. It's all good.
Yeah. The hair keeps getting grayer, and I get towards my ultimate final form of Silver Fox. So handsome and regal. But yes, stressed until I get there. But yes, Tuesday, November 2nd, 10 a.m. on Kickstarter, Point Nemo. So this was another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG podcast, mostly about moi. And we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Stu, where can the people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG, where I shall be posting shortly about 3-2-1 Action Point Nemo. Because, come on, Hambone's got this, right? You just need the links.
And Hambone greatly appreciates it. You can find me on the Twitter and on Instagram at John McGuire RPG. I'm posting more because now I have something to post about. And I'm also leaving the house because it's Halloween. You can check out the Vintage RPG podcast on Patreon if you like the show. We always recommend that you rate, review, and subscribe because your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. But if you really like the show, join our Patreon. We've got a killer Discord community. We got some behind-the-scenes looks at Stu's books, still tentatively titled Experience Points, My RPGs, 3-2-1 Action, and so much more. Patreon.com/VintageRPG. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dego West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.